Go. Yeah.
Well, good to see you, Lisa. How are you?
You too, Nate. I am actually super pumped about this topic today. I think it will help a lot of people and probably answer a lot of questions for people because of the different seasons of life that people go through and what they learn, how they cope, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm super excited for this.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this is awesome. So today, let's actually share the topic, which is changing perspective as you age. And this came out of something that we were listening to, one of the people that we follow, but it was really interesting because somebody called into his show and they were talking about basically like, I made all these mistakes and it's really hard for me to let them go. And, I think the gentleman was in his 20s, but he was just talking about, he was really focusing on the negative. And it wasn't necessarily a shift in perspective of like only look on the positive. What it was is, hey, as you age, your priorities change, your risk profile changes, your adaptation in life, your decisions become much more impactful. You and I, I'm going to keep this broad here, but we're in our 40s. But I can definitely tell the differences that I have in my decision making, in my priorities and the things I'm willing to do, how I analyze risk and things like that versus my 20s and my 30s. And I just thought it was really interesting because I have a lot more grace for myself now. I have a lot more education / understanding. And I think the experience when you get through your 20s and your 30s and you actually live through some of the ramifications of your decisions has a different toll when you reach your upper 30s and in your 40s. What do you
Yeah,
think?
definitely, for sure. Yes to all of that. I would say it's less so grace on my part and more actually on comfort with risk
Mm,
when it comes to failure, because when you go through a number of experiences, you learn that it hasn't killed you. You
mm,
still survived. There's usually a positive that comes out on the other side. And so it's not as much of a showstopper where you can't get past it or it takes you out for a period of time and you're depressed or whatever it is. It's well that really sucked and that's not how I would have wanted it to be, but I'm still standing. I know what to do to get back on track. And here's what I learned from that situation or what I would do differently next time. And so I think there's this perspective on risk and failure that shifts because of all the things that you've had to overcome that were unexpected or unplanned for.
yeah. Yeah, I feel like I know they say the cliche statement is right as you age, life moves faster, and I feel like that is true to certain degrees, right? We both have young children. Yours are a little bit older than mine, obviously, but like one of the things that I really recall is when I was in my 20s, it was like if this doesn't happen, like it's the end of the world. I can't go on vacation.
Right.
I don't want to take a break. I want to hustle. I want to pursue every single opportunity there is. And then as I've started to age and I've realized like, hey, I've made a different decision now in my 30s and in my 40s, and like it's not that big of a deal. Or, I look at things on social media slightly differently. I see this little like here's a perfect example. Yesterday I posted this beautiful hike that we did on Sunday, right? Took the whole
Yeah.
family to the peak of the mountain. It was
It was
really, really
beautiful.
wonderful. Yeah. And people see that. We got ice cream afterwards. And so I posted the ice cream and I posted the hike and everybody smiling. And it was like, but today, what I'm actually going to do is go out and I'm going to post the other side of that, which is the side people don't see. In the first 2 miles, the kids were just whining. They were hitting each other with sticks. It was brutal to get them out the door to the car. We're driving back home. Kingston threw up all over the car. So we got home, like, clean up the car
No.
that like smelled like vomit for, the last 30 minutes. But you realize more so what you see in these short little snippets isn't real. It's not the reality that a lot of people live through. It's just what you highlight. And I know we all know that, but until you truly live that and you can experience both sides of the coin, I just don't think people really focus on it enough to give themselves the opportunity to think through the whole scenario in a holistic manner, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think there's when you go through different experiences, there's a step up of self-confidence that comes, and a lot of times it's really subtle and you don't even realize that you're evolving and becoming more confident as a person until even years down the road. And I think that also changes your perspective on failures and what you hold on to or what you focus on even in the moments that are really hard because I got a lot of notches in my belt, both good and bad. And, if I hadn't gone through those experiences, I wouldn't be as confident or be able to showcase certain skills and strengths in the situations that I'm able to now. And it's hard to know what those are going to be when you are just starting out compared to now 20 years into, my career and thinking about, wow, yes, I wish I would have known all that right at the beginning. That I maybe would have made less mistakes, but maybe I would have made different mistakes. And so just understanding that it's not about knowing where every puzzle piece lies exactly at the right moment that it needs to, but more, what does the puzzle look like when you get 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, and seeing the beauty in what that can be.
Yeah. How do you think, I mean, so let's turn this into, I guess, actions for listeners. Because one of the things that I really wanted to talk about today is, we have the notches on our belt. Let's take the language that you're using. I don't get, maybe scared is the best way to say that now. When something happens, something goes off the rails, it's not as detrimental, right? I don't take it personally if somebody gets mad and yells at me, or the kids say something that I don't like, or a business deal doesn't.
You're mean, Dad.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely something that says like you learn to get thick skin when you have kids for sure. But like what are the things that you think about now when something maybe negative or not optimal happens in your life? Do you analyze it differently? What decisions or what thought processes kind of go through your head? Because I think that's really helpful for people to understand, especially people that are in their younger 20s, if not even upper 20s or even early 30s.
Yeah. I would say there's a couple of things. I mean, you and I were talking offline just about how habitual growth has impacted my life. So maybe a great example, that you and I were talking about is I've had some major steps professionally. One, acknowledging that maybe fear doesn't necessarily go away in any new situation. Like it's still okay to feel fear and anxious, but now instead of letting that consume me, it's a change in mindset and a change in dialogue in my head that says, I don't have to know all the answers right now. I've gotten this far. I'm confident that I can figure out. I know the foundational things that I need to do to set myself up for success.
Mm-hmm.
And when I fail, I'm going to learn from that and I'm going to be accountable for it. And then I'm going to figure out the next best path forward. And I think those mindsets have come from all the mistakes. And, even just like right now, I just kicked off a new chapter in my life and I'm going back to the basics with habitual growth because I know those are the things that make me successful. So getting my exercise, reading my devotional, watching my macros, like there are certain elements that I now understand have direct correlation to my performance and my ability to navigate difficult conversations or failures that I immediately put into action when I'm in a situation where I might be uncertain, afraid, or anxious.
Yeah. Do you find that you actually go through an inner monologue as well? So even not even exterior actions, but things that are like kind of rolling through your head of like, hey Lisa, that's not that big of a deal, or hey, I know you're getting worked up because you're feeling this way, but it's because of this thing over here. Like, does that happen to you?
Well, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. My inner monologue is much more positive in terms of framing a situation. And I think a lot of people struggle with kind of that cognitive behavioral piece, which is we either magnify things that are, we're afraid of, or we're uncertain, or we hyper focus on a failure. And being able to change that inner dialogue is really critical. So, for example, like I couldn't get into my computer yesterday. Like temporary password doesn't work. I don't know what my calendar shows. And it sounds like such a dumb example, but being super type A and wanting to have control and understand and be prepared, it now goes back to an inner monologue that says, can't change it. What are you doing about it? What action am I taking? I'll deal with, if I miss a meeting or whatever on the backside, and acknowledge what happened. And I'm not going to let it ruin the rest of my day. So it literally becomes a thought process that I put myself through to reframe that immediate situation that might take me down the rails to action oriented and positive outlook and not letting something just kind of cycle down for the rest of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, I do a lot of that too, and I think for me it's it'll be okay, which is always a narrative I've had, right? I've never felt isolated. I've never thought like I'm going to be out on the streets or anything like that, but I have noticed about myself I can think through things a little bit more. So I can step back and say it'll be okay. Nate, you're feeling like this. To your point, Lisa, hey, let's slow down. Let's focus on the basics. Or, I think the big one that gets a lot of people is just money. It's like and
Yeah.
this is happening a lot. There's a lot of layoffs now, right? There's a ton of people that are trying to get a job and it's not working out for them. But not only do I tell myself it's okay, it's going to work out, I'm still going to take action. But above and beyond that, I think I set more realistic timelines for myself, if that makes sense. Right.
Okay.
If, I think so, like, hey, I lost a job and I need to get a job, next month so I can pay the rent. I usually think like, hey, I've got to put some plans in place because this probably isn't going to happen for another like 3 months. I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that it happens tomorrow. Right. I'm not going to slow down on that. But the timeline to actually like have it occur, I think I naturally extend out now. And that actually provides a little bit of that word grace, right? It's like, hey,
Yeah.
you're doing everything you can. You've put your best foot forward, but now you're just holding yourself to some unreasonable expectation you actually can't meet because a lot of this is out of your control. You're going to do everything you can in your control, but the reality is you have to rely on other people to do things like interview you, read your resume, bring you
Right.
in, like go through the
Yeah.
process, right? It is a process. And so I just think the timelines and then just the understanding of like, are you doing everything that you possibly can to move that forward? That helps tremendously to reduce my stress and anxiety.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think I probably use a similar thing, but maybe I don't use the word timeline. I've become more accustomed to not knowing when something will end. So, let's say job layoff. I've had that too, right? I don't know what that time frame is going to be. I control what I can control. So, yep, we're aligned there. I know that it is going to work out, but I don't know how long that valley is going to last. And part of the inner monologue that I tell myself, and I'm not saying it's easy, I'm not saying I'm a beautiful, happy soul to be around in that moment. I mean, you've seen it too, but there is this understanding that I don't know how long it's going to take to come out on the other side, and that's okay. As long as I'm doing everything within my power to take action and move forward and continue to do the things that I know I need to do, then it will work out. And there's an element of faith that goes along with it because of the experiences that I've had over the last 2 decades. It does work out. And it usually works out not in a way that I've even foreseen, but something comes along. And so I think that willingness and ability to sit in uncertainty and not let it crumble everything else is a huge lesson that you learn over time.
I think that last part that you said is really, really important. And you don't have to be spiritual. I know you and I are Christian, and so that, we always rely on God and we know that there's a plan working behind the scenes. For those that aren't maybe religious, I think one of the awesome things that you just said is it always works out in a way that you can't see or you don't
Uh-huh.
know or you don't
Yeah.
expect. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard from people in my network, super successful people all the way down to people that are restarting their lives. It's, hey, this came out of left field. I didn't even see this opportunity or I didn't even think about this. And I'm so much happier over here. And I think that's also a really important piece is if something bad is happening in your life and you take it as a lesson of, hey, I'm learning from this, but I'm still open to every opportunity. I'm not desperate. I think desperation ruins people. It clouds your vision. It focuses people too much. But if you say, hey, I'm doing everything I can, I'm really focused on other areas, I'm open to new opportunities, those opportunities will find you and that will ultimately lead to a much better outcome, even if you can't see it right now.
Yeah. I think maybe circling back to one thing that you talked about earlier, which is like the pretty picture people see on social media and then like the reality that you are now lovingly going to show. Part of the faith or the being able to live in uncertainty that comes along with those times is recognizing that there are things that go on behind the scenes, for people that we don't know about, and being willing to engage with other people in those conversations like, hey, this is what I'm going through right now. And it's not like you need to broadcast it on social media, but one of the things, and it came up in that podcast that you were referencing earlier, I think in the first question, where Andy was talking about all successful people or most successful people have a partner or support person that has accompanied them in that journey. And people are not successful as an N of one. And I think that is such a true statement because what binds people together and builds strong relationships is the sense that we all have something that we're going through, and we rely on each other as a community to get outside of whatever it is that we are going through. And so I know for myself, I have a tendency when things aren't going really well to want to hide that and close it off. And it's been a skill I've had to learn over the years to be able to reach out and say, man, this really sucks right now. I don't know what else to do. Who can I connect with? And it could be someone just to listen. It could be professional network. It could be a number of things. But I think that's really important to keep in mind too, kind of circling this all back is, when we don't assume that everybody's perfect all the time, it creates opportunity for us to grow and build relationships in a way that allow for future opportunities when we're in hard times to actually come about.
I think that's gold. That's awesome. And I think we should talk about that next time, actually, having a business partner, somebody to walk through life with you. Because I agree that piece stuck out to me as well. And as somebody that has started businesses by myself, as somebody that has started businesses with other people, there's such power in community. And we are social beings. We talk about this all the time. I think most people realize this, and it's always interesting to me to hear, people post things like, AI is going to have, the first trillionaire who started a business in his basement by himself. And you're like, but why would you want to do that? Right. Like,
Right. Yeah.
part of life is like sharing it with somebody else. And so I always struggle with the isolation piece. And
Uh-huh.
but again, that's a topic for another day. But I definitely agree on all the perspectives here. I think it's really awesome, of what you shared and kind of your journey as you've been able to go through and refocusing on the fundamentals. And as you age, perspective does change. And when you start to realize the decisions that you have or that you make have such a significant impact. And as you age, the rest of your life becomes shorter. Being in our
Hmm.
40s, it's not like
Yeah.
we are spring chickens, but we're probably roughly halfway through life at this point. And so we've got to make sure that we're spending our time in the right areas, that we're spending it with the people that we love, that when we're making career moves or financial decisions, they are things that we can stand behind, because time does run out at the end of the day. Everybody is mortal. And I just think it's really important for people to hear that, especially younger generations, so they don't spend a lot of time drifting and thinking they can do whatever they want for as long as they want, because that perspective does change. It's exciting to do that
Yeah.
when you're younger. And I wouldn't take back anything I did when I was younger. I think I just would have been much more focused and more direct. And I would have given myself a little bit more grace for the things that didn't go right. So I could have enjoyed that process, that piece of the journey a little bit more.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, awesome. This is a great topic. Good thought. Yeah. Yeah. We sure will.
All
All
right.
right.
We'll see you, Elise.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Nate. Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.